Exactly 1 week away from the trade deadline, here is what the Giants need to do.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, hosting this show for over 6 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already. And please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show, especially on YouTube right now. We're just a few away from 10,000. So that's very exciting. Thank you to all the subscribers out there. And coming up on today's show, Susan Slusser talked to President of Baseball Operations, Buster Posey, about the trade deadline. We'll get into what Posey had to say. We will discuss whether pitching or hitting is more of a priority for this team 1 week ahead of the deadline. And also, we will finally dive a little bit deeper into this rumor that the Giants are interested in the player they call IKF. And if you've been listening to me the last few days, you know why I'm referring to him as IKF as well. We'll discuss what I mean. Quick note, if you didn't hear me yesterday, next Friday is my last day at Locked On. It's been an unbelievable journey. If you want to hear more about what I have planned, check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. And I'll also probably make a Blue Sky so you can hear there as well. Anyway, jumping right into the content for today, Buster Posey sat down with Susan Slusser. I don't know if they sat down, but of the San Francisco Chronicle, and talked about the upcoming trade deadline, also the team's recent play. And one of the things that stood out to me was that he kind of criticized a certain type of play that we've seen, especially like that first game in Atlanta with just sloppy defense, and then some of the sloppy defense we saw with Elliot Ramos in Toronto, although Ramos did make a great catch in the finale in Atlanta. But like the ball that was kind of between Jung-Hoo Lee and Ramos, and they both just didn't catch it, stuff like that. And Posey said the tough ones are for all of us when we watch, and it's the parts of the game that are controllable but aren't performed well. Our standard is we have to do better than that. And so that is relevant when it comes to trades, because it makes you think, like, who on the field do you see that happening with? And I don't know, Posey could just be saying that, or it could be signaling something. Like, I wondered until he had a great game defensively the other day, if the Giants might consider trading someone like Elliot Ramos if it involved someone like, I don't know, Steven Kwan. And there could be a way that could make sense for both teams, because Kwan is pretty arguably better and definitely a better defender, but has less team control. And so for the Guardians, that kind of deal could make some sense. That now I'm just throwing out a rant, like totally out of the blue trade scenario. I love Steven Kwan as a fit for the Giants. He grew up a big Giants fan, and he is under team control through 2027. Definitely a guy it feels like you could probably extend. That's the thing. He's the perfect player for this team. So I'm kind of going off on a tangent already, but circle Steven Kwan for me if the Guardians are in fact willing to listen on him. And we're going to get into this ESPN top 50 trade candidates list and hunt for players who make sense for the Giants. And it is a, if you look at the list, one of the top players there is Steven Kwan, and it's no surprise at all. So anyway, Buster Posey continued saying that Slusser said, how would you look at your needs? A couple weeks ago, Slusser, might have said left-handed reliever, maybe possibly a right-handed bat, but is the rotation now potentially an area you'd look at? It just says you'd look. Typo. But anyway, Buster Posey said it's the old adage, you can never have enough starting pitching. And it's true for a reason. We do feel like we have depth with Wisenhunt and Carson Seymour, and Kai-Wei Tang has been throwing the ball well. But you understand sometimes it's going to take a lot of different guys to get you across the finish line. So you're definitely scouring the markets. And he also repeated this thing about you pitch the ball, you catch the ball, and, timely hitting. And so that's part of why a guy like Steven Kwan, who's so excellent defensively, such a contact hitter, like Posey got into the draft and talked about their focus on contact hitters that was evident in this draft. And he even said some stuff that I found controversial, like how hitting the ball on the ground, hard on the ground, can actually be beneficial in their ballpark. I don't know about that. I mean, ground balls are usually just nightmares because of positioning these days, even though they can't shift as much, that does make a difference. They still shift. It's less restrictive. And I don't know, like he talked about pairing some of your big bats with contact hitters who spray line drives around. And I think that that's fine. Like, as long as you recognize that you also need impact bats, and pretty sure he does recognize it. He himself was an impact bat. And then you look at a guy like Rafi Devers and what he was able to do in this most recent game. And so anyway, just reading the tea leaves, Slusser asks about right-handed outfielders, basically, and mentions Marco Luciano. Marco Luciano is someone who's super interesting because he's out of minor league options after this year, and he's not playing at all in the major leagues this year so far. And so is he someone who gets traded? If he's not someone who gets traded, what is the plan? Like, this might be the time to trade him or call him up, but if you're not going to call him up, then it almost feels like you should trade him, but his value is pretty low at this point relative to where it was at certain times leading up to this point. And so anyway, there's just a lot of different questions, but he did say that they were looking at that market as well. He said, I think we have to keep our options open. Luciano has been mashing left-handed pitching, and obviously we've struggled against left-handed pitching, so it's conversations with that. So that's interesting. You've got a guy who's doing it, and yet it has been Luis Matos who has been the up-and-down call-up young outfielder. I don't know if Luciano's defense hasn't been up to par. He's moved to the outfield. He was formerly a shortstop. They were kind of stubborn with that. He played short at the major league level. It was a disaster. And so he's learning a new position. But yeah. Oh, I found the quote here, by the way. He said, hopefully this is a draft group that stays in the middle of the field with line drives. I believe the recipe to success is sprinkling in those contact guys with some of our other big bats that we currently have. So that actually speaks to like Steven Kwan as an example of who this is a guy. I'm going to tell you in just a minute what I think that I would give up for perhaps the perfect fit for the Giants, Steven Kwan. So we'll get into who are the players who are available, who makes sense for the Giants, and then someone they've actually been linked to in a tangible rumor. All of that coming up in just a minute. And before we get into it, today's episode of Locked on Giants is brought to you in part by Game Day Hue. And so is this hat that I'm wearing. For Giants fans like me, this one hits the mark. Game Day Hue makes clean, no logo gear with team-inspired colorways for every pro and college fan base. It's about letting your colors speak for you. No giant logos, just smart, versatile style that works on game day, on the course, or anywhere in between. The hat pairs perfectly with my usual gear. It doesn't replace my team's logo stuff. It just adds to the lineup. It's the kind of hat, this one right here, that reps your team without screaming it. Subtle, but still says everything. And it's not just hats. Check out their split shade gloves made for the golf course, or the perfect gift for the fan who has everything. I'm literally wearing it as I podcast because it just looks so cool right now. So right now you can get 15% off with code MLB15 at GameDayHue.com. That's GameDayHue.com. The code even stacks on bundle deals, so now is the time to load up. Let your colors talk, because colors speak louder than words. That's GameDayHue.com, code MLB15. All right, as promised, we are going to get into the ESPN top 50 trade candidates list that is very much worth looking into if you're a Giants fan, because I would expect the Giants to be buyers at this deadline, and perhaps even for Buster Posey to get ahead of things and make a move before the deadline, which is a week from today, on Thursday of next week, the 31st. So the question I'm asking is, what's most important to this team? And it's a tough question to answer, because if you look at the offense, you certainly can say they haven't done enough. However, I think if you look at the offense, Buster Posey alluded to this too in his conversation with Slusser, you look across the diamond and you've got Matt Chapman at third, Rafi Devers now potentially at first, Willy Adames at short, Casey Schmitt doing pretty well at second, Patrick Bailey doing what he does defensively behind the plate. And then you've got, solid players in the outfield. There's really no position where it's like a complete disaster, I would say. And yet the offense has struggled for sure. And then you look at the pitching staff, and they've got some of their very best players, including probably their best player, Logan Webb. Definitely an argument with maybe Chapman mixed in there, and Devers when he's right. They got some good players, but Logan Webb, Robbie Ray, Landon Roop, the job he's done, and yet starting pitching may be the biggest need, because outside of those three, Hayden Birdsong has been so bad recently that he was optioned to the minors, and Justin Verlander has just been consistently inconsistent all year, if not just consistently not good. And so, like Posey said, it'll be tough to make it to the finish line, kind of hobbling it together with this current pitching staff that they have. They do have some options in the minors, as Posey mentioned. Seymour is currently in the majors. Wisenhunt and Tang are not on the major league roster, so they would have to be 40-man additions. So you could definitely make the case that starting pitching is more important. Especially, think if they had an injury to one of those top three, like Webb or Robbie Ray or Landon Roop, they would be in some serious trouble. And so I would expect them to get someone who's probably not super exciting, but maybe is solid and can stabilize a rotation that could use some solid innings eater types, or at least one. And when I say innings eater, I mean quality innings, not ace caliber. And there's really not a lot of ace caliber pitching, and it's just not the type of thing I think the Giants are going to spend big on. When you look at the market, which largely dictates these things, a lot of the top trade candidates, we're talking Sandy Alcantara potentially, and he had an ERA, I think he made a start yesterday, but it was in the 7s. So he has a history. He won the Cy Young Award, then he unanimously in 2022. And then he had Tommy John in 2024, and he's just got a bad ERA right now. Another top candidate is Seth Lugo, but he's just kind of unexciting and I believe 35 years old and below average fastball velocity, not great strikeout rates. So stuff like that, I could see him as a fit actually, but it's not someone you're going to just go crazy to acquire. Now, on the flip side, when you look at, okay, what did Posey say about some of the plays that you maybe can control a little bit better? Like, I don't know, Elliot Ramos charging in like 7 steps and then having a ball sail over his head in a 1-to-1 game. Like, I'm not saying you have to trade Elliot Ramos. That was kind of a not crazy, but extreme thing of me to even mention. So to get a Steven Kwan, it's not like you have to give up Elliot Ramos, especially when you consider the fact that next year, or after this year, I should say, Mike Yastrzemski reaches free agency. And so when you look at their outfield moving forward, they're not exactly flush with like MLB ready outfielders, unless you want to count Luciano or Luis Matos, but neither of them has proven that they deserve like a starting role on next year's team. Certainly not Luciano, who we haven't even seen in the major leagues. And so when you look at some of the names, the top trade candidates on this list by ESPN, number 1 is Eugenio Suarez. I understand that he's having a career year, on pace for 50 homers, like having an awesome season. The D-backs have lost some games in a row, and they put the chance of a trade at 90%. So I get that, but the Giants don't need Eugenio Suarez. They have a third baseman. So number 2 on the list, Steven Kwan, and they put the chance of a trade at 20%. And I think that that's fair. I don't think he's likely to be dealt, and that would be reflected by a 20% chance. And the little write-up goes as follows. An all-star the past 2 years and Gold Glove winner in all 3 of his previous big league seasons, Kwan is a do-everything left fielder with elite bat-to-ball skills and 2 years of club control after 2025. Cleveland doesn't want to deal him, but with a dearth of available bats, the Guardians at the very least will listen to see whether teams are willing to blow them away with offers. And I think the reason the Giants got the Devers deal done and got it done so soon is because they were willing to do what no other team was willing to do. And so I wouldn't put it past Buster Posey if he just circles a guy and says, this is the guy we want. Like, we've heard that now a couple times. We heard it with Adames. Like, Adames himself said they met with him early in the recruiting process in free agency, and they sat him down and they just said, you're the guy. You're the guy we want. What's a fair number? And they worked it out, and they worked it out pretty fast. It was not a late signing. And so I can totally see Steven Kwan being like Buster Posey's dream. And he's kind of my dream as well, because we saw he's the guy who made that huge impact with his arm in the series in San Francisco when the Guardians were in town. He is owner of a career 285 average, 357 on base, 395 slugging. So not a lot of power for sure, but really good defense, really good. And not a ton of steals, but he's got 63 career steals, 11 this year, caught twice. But he makes an impact on the bases with his legs, and he certainly makes an impact in the field and with his arm. He's got a really good arm as well. Career in left field, 61 outs above average. That like almost looks like a typo in like 4,000 innings. That's crazy. And 20 outs above average. So this guy's an unbelievable left field defender and a strikeout rate of 8.3%. And so he is definitely someone that the Giants value. Like, I can just say that without even having to guess. If you look at his career numbers, he's been about league average offensively when facing left-handed pitching, and when facing right-handed pitching, about 23% above average. And so, man, yeah, perfect combination. And like I said, grew up a Giants fan, grew up in the Bay Area, would love coming to the Giants, I presume. So bring Steven Kwan home, Buster. That's my recommendation. But there's plenty of guys on this list. There's Jarren Duran of the Red Sox, although the Red Sox are playing better. There's some good relievers that could certainly be like better values maybe than what it would take to get like a Steven Kwan. You could get like an elite reliever maybe for significantly less than it would take to get a good position player like Yohan Duran or Emmanuel Clase, two elite American League Central relievers. But beyond that, Cade Smith, also of the Guardians. There's a bunch of good relievers. Mitch Keller of the Pirates, starting pitcher. Couple Diamondbacks pitchers, Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly. Merrill Kelly might be like the perfect Buster Posey target as well. That guy, at the very least, you wouldn't have to face him anymore. He's had so many good games against the Giants in his career. But definite like pitchability and just a good pitcher. And then you look at a guy like Josh Naylor and Ryan O'Hearn. So there are some strong fits, those two players being first basemen, but also could DH. So, you've got Wilmer Flores, you've got Dom Smith, but if you're really serious about trying to make a run, and Posey never wants to concede the division, like if you're serious, if you added like Kwan, Merrill Kelly, and Josh Naylor or something like that, that would make you significantly better. Like that would just redefine your lineup. Naylor is a power hitter who doesn't strike out much too. Love Josh Naylor as a player, impending free agent. So, would be a rental, wouldn't cost as much as Kwan because Kwan has those two years of control after this year. So there are some guys, and I would expect maybe for the Giants to end up with at least one of those guys that I just read off. There's also some other good outfielders towards the bottom of this list or the middle of it. Taylor Ward having a nice season. And yeah, I mean, the Giants are listed as one of the best fits. The Angels don't typically sell those, so I don't know. But the Giants have actually been connected to a particular player. So we're finally going to talk about the IKF connection and why he could make sense for the Giants, but why ultimately you wouldn't be excited if they got him. And I think they have something bigger up their sleeve. We'll get into it in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. When I had my accounts scattered all over the place, credit cards, bank accounts, investments, it was next to impossible to keep track and have a good idea of how everything pieced together. Everything changed when I consolidated. Take control of your finances like I did with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. All right, here we go. We're going to get into these IKF rumors and explain why am I calling him IKF and not saying his full name. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we will be doing our last round of mailbag questions. That's a little sad because you're going to want to know about trades and I'm going to want to hear what you guys have to say. So look out on Twitter and on YouTube for the prompt. and we will get to your mailbag questions tomorrow. So the Giants, this is the third day I've mentioned it, and the first time that I've chosen to dive into it, have been linked to Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. Is it Falefa or is it Falefa? I'm not sure. I don't remember. I used to know. It seems to have escaped me. But I do know that he is known as IKF. And that's probably why. It's because when he was with the Yankees, that they called him that. They don't like to say very long words out there, apparently. And neither do I in this case. But Kiner-Falefa. 30 years old, right-handed hitter. On the season, 81 weighted runs created plus, despite a 271 batting average. 271 is like way better than league average. And yet, he's been about 20% below average with the bat. And so that just speaks to a lack of on base, just a 4.7% walk rate, and 5.5% in his career. And it also speaks to a lack of power, just a 0.64 isolated power. That's got to be one of the lowest in the game. 1 homer, 12 doubles, 2 triples, and 65 singles. So he's getting some hits, but they're almost all singles, is what that tells me. I mean, I literally just read out the raw numbers. But yeah, I mean, the guy adds value with his legs. Not just stolen bases, but also just running the bases, which is important. He's got 12 steals, caught 3 times. Obviously, there's plenty of more season left. So projections have him finishing with about 20 steals. He makes contact. Strikeout rate in his career is like 16%. This year, it's 17%. And this year, he started 88 games at shortstop, 1 game at third. And in his career, he's played all over the diamond. I was thinking of him as a second baseman, but he's mostly not. He's mostly played shortstop in his career, where he's got, oddly, 31 defensive runs saved and -11 outs above average. He's also played the outfield, where he's got -4 defensive runs saved and -2 outs above average, so I would not consider him an outfielder based on that. Third base, he's been very good. 24 defensive runs saved, 27 outs above average. Second base, in a small sample, 10 defensive runs saved, 2 outs above average. And he's also caught, but not since 2019. So let's not think of him as a catcher. But right-handed bat, they already have a right-handed bat in Casey Schmitt. So it's not like a platoon player. I think of IKF as more of a bench player, someone who can fill in defensively at various positions. Like maybe you want to upgrade over the Christian Koss, Tyler Fitzgerald kind of uncertainty, with neither of those players being proven at the big league level. I could understand. And then also if Casey Schmitt were to falter, it would be kind of an insurance plan. And so I could see this happening, actually. IKF is in the final year of a 2-year, $15 million contract. So he's just making the prorated portion of $7.5 million. The Pirates are not going to get much for this player, and yet he could be a useful role player on a contender, in my opinion. So I understand the connection. It wouldn't be an exciting acquisition. I'm trying to see if he has platoon splits that you can take advantage of. No. 78 weighted runs created plus against lefties, and that's who he should be hitting better. 0.81 isolated power in his career against them. That's crazy. Just does not hit well against lefties. And against righties, 15% below average, also with no power. So real singles hitter here. And, though he can play defense, he can run, he can steal, and he'll make contact. And the Giants have shown, for better or worse, I don't know that I totally agree with the heavy emphasis on contact. It's not like they made this move. Like, I would be perfectly fine if they did not trade for Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. But he's going to get traded, and I think he could help as a bench player. But I would much rather them continue to see what they have in Casey Schmitt, who hit a monstrous home run the other day. The defense for Schmitt, to me, has been super impressive. He hasn't had the chance to be tested very much at second base, but when he has, I mean, he's picked some balls that looked really difficult. He's got a cannon of an arm. He is having an above average offensive season last year and this year, a little bit above average. If you combine these last 2 years, it looks pretty good. I mean, Schmidt's hitting for power. He's got 11 home runs in his last 86 games, a 179. That's like 100 points higher. Isolated power over the last 2 seasons in 86 games, 107 weighted runs created plus. And he's a young player who hasn't fully established himself. He's 26 until March. And so I wouldn't want to take playing time away from this young man in favor of a guy like IKF. But he would instead be replacing probably someone who is not even coming to mind right now. Oh, Brett Wisely, for example, on the bench. I know that Wisely's a lefty, but it's not like Wisely's putting up big numbers in a platoon, So I could see them feeling the need to upgrade here or just wanting to upgrade here, and IKF could make some sense. And so that's my take on that. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, I'm Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. That is where you will hear about what's next for me as I prepare to step away from this show that I have loved hosting for the last 6+ years. I've got a week and a day left. And so check me out on Twitter to hear more about what's next. Anyway, thank you so much for listening today. Everydayers, tomorrow we'll be answering your mailbag questions. Can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening today. You are now Locked On Giants.